Your life is not a race, it's a countdown. Every tick of the clock is a moment you cannot save. You've been told that if you hustle now, you can rest later. But look in the mirror. Time isn't waiting for you. Welcome to the Chronos principle. Tonight, we expose the monster that is slowly devouring your youth. Welcome to the debate.
Yeah, it's quite the ominous start today.
It is, but it's necessary. We are breaking down a deeply unsettling framework today. One that takes the pervasive exhaustion, the burnout, and, the hustle culture we all live with, and looks at them not as personal failures.
Right, but as an encounter with an actual monster.
Exactly. The premise we're dissecting argues that the time famine we experience in the modern world is essentially a manifestation of the ancient time-devouring titan, Chronos.
It really is a terrifying concept.
It is, and I will argue that the time famine we experience is a structural weapon, that the modern economy itself acts as the monster, creating an artificial scarcity to extract our constant productivity.
And I will argue that the monster is deeply psychological and internal. We willingly adopt a scarcity mindset, treating time as a finite currency, and we sacrifice our present for a mythological future that never arrives.
Let's ground this in reality first, because quote-unquote time famine is a very academic term for a feeling that, every single person listening right now knows intimately.
Oh, absolutely. The Sunday scaries?
Yeah, exactly. It's that visceral anxiety on a Sunday evening. It's the guilt that hits you if you sit on the couch for an hour without checking an email or reading something quote-unquote enriching. It's the compulsion to listen to an audiobook or even a show like this on 1.5x speed just to cram it into your commute.
Because you feel like there simply are not enough hours in the day.
Right, and if you stop moving, you will drown. But we have to look at how that environment is engineered. This isn't a natural state of human existence. The modern economy has literally decoupled wages from productivity.
Okay, but
since the 1970s, the cost of housing, education, and healthcare has skyrocketed while real earning power stagnated. You literally have to run faster today just to stay in the exact same place your parents were in.
I see what you're saying, but
the modern economy is like a rigged treadmill, and the speed of the belt is always structurally increasing, forcing the runner into a perpetual state of anxiety. We are taught that time is money.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. You are attributing all the agency to the treadmill and completely ignoring the runner.
Ignoring the runner? How?
Look at the runner. They are the ones voluntarily strapping a heart rate monitor to their chest, wearing a smart ring to track their sleep, and, running a stopwatch to time their morning routine.
Well, they have to.
Do they? Yes, the economic environment is demanding. I'm not denying that. But the monster isn't the treadmill. It's the stopwatch we refuse to put down. The sheer panic of unproductivity, the time famine itself, is a psychological condition.
But
we aren't just trying to survive, we are trying to pack 48 hours of hyper-efficient action into a 24-hour day.
Because if you don't, you get thrown off the back of the machine. How do you just drop the stopwatch when your literal survival, your ability to pay rent or keep your family's health insurance, is completely tied to timing your laps perfectly?
Because the stopwatch doesn't actually save you. To understand what's really happening, we have to look at the myth the Chronos principle is named after.
Okay, the ancient Greek myth.
Right. In the mythology, the titan Chronos learns a prophecy that his children will eventually overthrow him. So, to prevent this, to maintain his power and essentially freeze time, what does he do?
He eats them.
Exactly. He swallows his own children the moment they are born. He consumes his own future to protect his present. And the psychological framework we're analyzing takes this imagery and modernizes it.
Okay.
Chronos isn't just a figure of a scythe anymore. The text portrays him as a grotesque, many-armed monster voraciously eating calendars and timepieces.
And how does that map to the person optimizing their morning routine? They're just trying to get to work.
Because those calendars and timepieces are the tools of our own self-surveillance. We map out our days in 15-minute increments. We replace meals with liquid meal replacements so we don't have to stop working to chew.
Oh, wow.
We are the ones feeding our schedules to the monster. The text states that the scarcity mindset itself creates the anxiety. We view basic, unfiltered human existence as a waste of time.
So you think it's just fear?
Yes. The reason we feel that time famine isn't just because rent is high. It's because we have an internal terror of being alone with our own thoughts. We are so afraid of the present moment that we constantly project ourselves into the future.
Hold on. I want to pull apart this idea that we're terrified of the present because I think it ignores the very real mechanism of how time is money became a literal structural truth.
How so?
You're framing this hyper-efficiency as a pathology, right? A fear of unfiltered existence. But let's look at the shift in the labor market. 100 years ago, you punched a clock. Your time was bought in discrete chunks.
True.
Today, in the knowledge economy or the gig economy, the boundary of time is completely dissolved. The Slack message pings at 9 p.m. The margin for error is razor thin.
But you don't have to answer it at 9 p.m.
If you don't optimize, there is an algorithm or a hyper-competitive global labor pool ready to replace you. The self-surveillance you were talking about, the scheduling in 15-minute blocks, is a necessary survival adaptation to a hostile environment.
I think that's a bit of an exaggeration.
It's not, though. Society has stripped away all other metrics of inherent human value. Your worth is entirely tied to your output. So when you sit on the couch, you feel worthless because the system has explicitly told you that if you aren't producing, you have zero value.
If it were purely a survival adaptation, then the people who achieve survival would stop running.
Well,
But they don't. Look at the top of the ladder. People who have millions in the bank, who possess absolute financial security, they still wake up at 4 a.m. to optimize their cold plunges and achieve inbox zero.
Sure, but the burnout persists even when the threat of starvation is entirely removed. Why? Because the scarcity mindset has fundamentally rewired their psychology.
okay, that is a fair point about the top of the ladder.
Right? The capacity to simply exist without producing has been destroyed. We literally do not know how to consume time without turning it into a metric. A vacation becomes an itinerary to conquer. A hobby becomes a side hustle. We become the many-armed monster frantically grasping at tasks.
Okay, let's explore why we do that, though. I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Why do we turn the hobby into a side hustle? It brings us to the illusion of the bargain, the idea of the deferred life plan.
Go on.
Hypercapitalism coerces us by making a very specific, insidious promise. It promises leisure that it never intends to give. The reason the millionaire is still waking up at 4 a.m. and the reason the gig worker is grinding out 14-hour shifts is based on the exact same structural deception.
The promise of a reward.
Yes, the system lies to us about the reward. It dangles a carrot. It tells us if you just get through this quarter, if you just reach this financial milestone, if you just clear your inbox, then you will finally be safe.
It places the blame squarely on our own delusion. You talk about bargaining for a tranquil future. Look at the traditional depiction of Chronos, or Father Time. What is he holding?
A scythe.
Right.
The classic Grim Reaper imagery.
Exactly. But think about the mechanical function of a scythe. It is an agricultural tool. It is designed for the harvest. It doesn't chase the wheat around the field, right?
Right, it just cuts.
It waits for the crop to grow, and then it cuts it down. Chronos doesn't chase, he waits with a scythe. The profound tragedy of the Chronos principle is that we actually believe we can bargain with a titan.
Wow. Yeah.
We say to ourselves, I am going to neglect my marriage today so I can provide for my spouse tomorrow. Or, I am going to completely destroy my physical and mental health in my 30s so I can relax on a beach in my 60s.
And it never works out that way.
No. We are making a unilateral bargain with a void. You cannot put time into a savings account to spend later with interest. By the time you reach 60, the relationships you deferred are dead. The physical vitality you traded away is gone.
Chronos consumed them.
Exactly. The economy might offer the carrot, sure, but it is our own deep-seated psychological arrogance that makes us reach for it, believing we are somehow exempt from the harvest.
That is incredibly bleak. But let's look at the verbs in the material we're analyzing. We are taught to do this. The environment is designed.
Taught? Yes, but we accept the lesson.
You call it psychological arrogance to believe we can save time, but I look at how society operates and see a meticulous, structured deception. We aren't naturally born thinking time is a bank account. We are indoctrinated into it by a system that requires our constant motion to function.
Well,
Every advertisement, every corporate structure, every societal milestone reinforces the lie that rest must be earned through exhaustion.
even if I can see that we were taught the lie, the internal complicity is what gives the monster its teeth. When someone actually tries to step back, say they decide to prioritize their mental health, or they take a lower-paying job to have more time with their kids, what happens?
They get penalized economically.
They get penalized culturally. The reflex of the culture is to brand them as lazy, unambitious, or unmotivated. We enforce the Chronos principle upon each other.
I suppose that's true.
We act as the many arms of the monster, pulling our peers back into the maw of productivity. Hustle culture isn't just an individual pathology. It's a shared, collective religion, where the highest virtue is self-annihilation in the name of efficiency. We are proud of how efficiently we are burning.
If we are entirely incapable of resting, and if the promised leisure is a complete myth, then that forces a terrifying paradigm shift. We spend our entire lives conceptualizing our struggle as a race against time. We genuinely believe there is a finish line. We believe there is a summit of success where we can plant our flag, catch our breath, and look back at what we've built.
And there is no summit.
None.
There is no finish line. The entire architectural framework of the race is an illusion meant to keep you running until you collapse. The analysis doesn't just say you won't win the race. It follows it up with an absolute existential blow.
Quote, the system is designed so that time always eats you.
Yes. The system is designed so that time always eats you.
Exactly. If there's no finish line, then we aren't runners. We are fuel.
Wait, say that again?
We are fuel. Think about the physical mechanics of how the modern economy extracts value from us. Where does all this hyper-efficiency actually go?
Into the machine.
Yes, your extra hours, your skipped lunches, your destroyed sleep schedules, they are converted into data, into output, and ultimately into corporate profit. Even when you are completely burnt out, lying on your couch at midnight doom scrolling because you are too exhausted to read a book, your sheer exhaustion is keeping you docile enough to consume algorithmic advertisements.
That's a dark thought.
It is. Your burnout is mathematically factored into a platform's quarterly earnings. The machine of the economy requires combustible material to run. It feeds on our vitality. It uses our finite existence to keep itself operational. We are shoveling our own lives into the furnace, believing we are driving the train, when in reality, we are just the coal.
That imagery, shoveling our lives into the furnace, it perfectly mirrors the ancient horror of Chronos devouring his own children. We are the children of this era, birthed by this economy only to be consumed by it.
Exactly.
But the most insidious part of this dynamic, tying back to the psychological scarcity mindset, is that the machine doesn't have to forcefully drag us to the furnace anymore.
No, we walk right in.
We march ourselves into the fire. We meticulously schedule our own consumption.
And we brand it. We give it empowering names to mask the grotesque reality of what is happening to us. We call it the grind. We call it building an empire.
Right.
We measure our worth by how brightly we burn out, completely oblivious to the fact that we are simply being eaten. We look at a calendar that is completely devoid of margin, a life with absolutely no empty space, and instead of seeing a tragic waste of human potential, we see a badge of honor.
Because to see it as a tragedy would require us to admit that we have wasted our most precious resource. It requires us to face the scythe. It is much easier to worship the monster than to fight it.
So, bringing our two perspectives together here, my position remains that the hyper-capitalist economy functions as an external oppressive manifestation of Chronos. It is an engineered structure that weaponizes the cost of living and the demands of the market to create an inescapable time famine. It coerces us into acting as its fuel by dangling a false promise of a tranquil future that it never intends to provide.
And my position is that the true horror lies in our internal adoption of this exact mythology. The monster thrives because of our own scarcity mindset.
We voluntarily treat our finite, beautiful existence as a mere currency, feeding our days, our calendars, and our very capacity for joy to a titan we mistakenly believe we can appease.
Yet, whether this monster is fundamentally an external economic machine or an internal psychological pathology, we arrive at the same grim reality.
We really do.
The burnout, the relentless hustle, the absolute exhaustion, they result in the exact same tragic end. Our use, our relationships, and our peace of mind are devoured. The realization that we are not racing toward a summit, but rather acting as combustible material for a system designed to consume us, is a heavy diagnosis to carry.
It is heavy, but examining both the sociological mechanics of the modern economy and the psychological depths of ancient mythology provides a much clearer picture of our modern condition.
I agree.
The Chronos principle isn't just an abstract theory. It is the lived, breathing reality of anyone who has ever felt the crushing weight of an unyielding schedule.
There's definitely more to explore regarding how we might possibly decouple from this machine, how we might reclaim our mental health, and actually dismantle the scarcity mindset. But understanding the nature of the time famine is the necessary first step. We've exposed the machinery behind the exhaustion and the monstrous nature of the hustle we so blindly revere.
Listen closely to that ticking clock. It is not the sound of time passing, it is the sound of time eating.